Hello, welcome to my channel and welcome to Andalusia in southern Spain. I hope you're well wherever you are. I'm here on holiday with my family, having a lovely time.
Isn't your microphone going to get done? Oh. Right.
Dirty love. So now I go that side. Oh, oh, oh! Oh, 40 love. So, love 15. Damn. It's our first holiday in quite a few years actually, and certainly our first holiday in a long time where we've not been on some sort of scouting mission looking for somewhere to live. So this is a whole new experience for me and I am enjoying it thoroughly. It also happens to be pretty much 12 months since I returned to live in England, and some of you will know that I was very reluctant to return there, and so I find it quite strange to be sat here in these gorgeous mountains overlooking the sea with this glorious weather in October and thinking to myself, I am actually happy to be living in England. And I am quite surprised. I thought there was quite a strong possibility that whilst here in Spain I would be looking at property prices and imagining what it's like to live here. But other than the odd little moment, that's not really been the case. And so I thought I would use this opportunity to reflect on why that is. Why is it that I'm happy to be living in England? Why is it that I am not craving to live somewhere like this? And to see what we can learn from that. Okay, so hope you find something interesting in this. I'll also maybe show a few little clips of this beautiful area that we're in, so that it's not just me sat here talking to you. Even though I'm having a wonderful time here, I'm actually also looking forward to going back home. and it's been a long time since I felt that way. So I thought I'd explain to you why that is, because as you see this beautiful town that we're currently in, you might perhaps think I've lost my mind, that I'm bonkers to have chosen England with all its rain and its problems over somewhere like this. But I hope what I explain to you makes sense, and you'll understand why there's more to a country than the architecture or the mountains or the Mediterranean Sea or whatever. Actually, what matters is something much deeper than that. But I'll talk about that, and I'll tell you a little bit about the journey I've been on and help you to understand, hopefully, why England is right for me and why that's where I belong. And hopefully, by talking to you about this, I'll be able to fully convince myself of that fact too. Okay, so a little bit of background first of all about me. So I left England when I was in my early 40s and lived in Germany somewhere between 15 and 16 years, and came back to live in England in October 2024. Okay, so why did I struggle in England? Why did I struggle in Germany? Well, obviously, during a 15-year period, the messy complexity of life catches up with you. You can't run away from your problems, and we had several different challenges during that period, and there were various strands of the story that ran through our lives during those 15 years. But because I want to keep this video fairly short, I'll just pick on the one strand that runs through it and the part that's relevant to my decision to move back to England and the reason why I feel so good about it now. Goodness me, this is seriously challenging, this walk. One of the reasons I came this time of night was so there weren't any tourists around, which makes it easier to make a video. Also, I thought it might be nice to show it you at night time, and I also didn't want to be unsociable with my family. Don't get to see them very often, so they wouldn't have been very pleased if I had just left them to go off making a video. Anyway, why did I struggle in Germany? Okay, so there were like these three different phases to my time there. And the first phase lasted 5 years, and that was with my family. And that was that exciting adventure, a new beginning for us, where we were discovering what it was like to live abroad and learning all about German culture, and full of optimism about what the future might hold. So it was a good time. But eventually my children wanted to return to England to finish off their education, and my wife didn't want them to do that on their own, so they all went back and I stayed behind in Germany, and we downsized, so I just moved into a little flat. And during that time I would say my mental health wasn't in great shape, and I was living in a tiny little flat, so I didn't have room to invite guests to come and stay with me, or even to invite people to come around for dinner in the evening. And more during that period, I became a bit of a loner, a little bit reclusive. And it coincided with a lot of changes at work, where basically the international department that I previously worked for, where we all spoke in English, switched into a German department where we all spoke in German. And I had to double down on my efforts to learn the language. And I really struggled with it. And it got worse in some ways when I actually became a German citizen, because then I felt really ashamed of myself, because I'd lived in the country for several years. I'd collected my certificate from the Mayor of Bonn, and I felt very proud of that achievement. You know, it was fantastic to be a part of that country. But I was embarrassed about the fact that I was not really able to speak properly. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I started to feel quite depressed about it. I would sit in meetings at work where everyone was talking in German, and I was concentrating really hard trying to understand exactly what they were saying, and then I was thinking about how do I respond to what they're saying, how do I formulate a good response in German. And by the time I'd processed all of this, the conversation had moved on and I was left behind. And when I was in an all-day workshop doing this, I found it exhausting. And then they'd say to me, do you want to go out for a drink tonight? And I really just didn't feel like it at all. You know, it was, I'm an introvert anyway, and I just needed to go home and recharge my batteries. So I felt like I became more and more isolated. And that's all right, I'm just looking for the best way out of here now. Anyway, fast forward to when I came back home to England, and obviously all that changed. You know, everyone was speaking my language. But for the first 7 or 8 months, I was going through a huge transformation. I'd left behind a country that had been my home for a long time, and I was adjusting to a new country that I live in Devon, so I'd never lived in Devon before. It was a new county, didn't know anyone there. And yeah, it took a lot of adjusting. You know, the country had changed since I left, and I had to sort a lot of stuff out. And at the same time, I also had some health issues, so I discovered I had cancer almost as soon as I got back. I had to have a lot of treatment and operation and lots of consultations. And that ran on for about 7 months. And then after that, my mental health went really downhill. I was feeling very anxious and depressed. And I started having therapy. And what came out of the therapy was that, among several other things, I have social anxiety. I realised that the social anxiety I had in Germany was just off the scale. It was incredible. I felt so anxious when everyone around me was talking in German, and when I tried to talk in German myself, I felt very self-conscious. I would agonise over every single word that I spoke. So I didn't feel at all connected. It also meant I felt I couldn't contribute to society. I was living in my own little shell, in my own little bubble, and that meant that I couldn't go out there and help other people in society, because I couldn't even help myself, let alone anyone else. So it was really interesting to understand that, because I had always thought, when I was in Germany, I thought I'm just not very intelligent. I've been so slow to learn the language. I'm obviously not clever enough, not smart enough. My brain doesn't work quickly enough. I felt like there was something wrong with me, or perhaps sometimes I thought, I'm not trying hard enough, I'm not being brave enough, I should just talk more and just learn the language like a child does. So all these thoughts were going through my mind, and I was just being very critical of me as a person, and that was making my self-confidence go down lower and lower. Whereas in England, it's all started to go in another way. I'm starting to understand some of the ways that my brain works. I'm starting to be much kinder to myself. And so I'm starting to generally feel less of an outsider, and I feel I have a contribution to make to society in England. And the volunteering that I'm doing is incredible. I am helping people who are struggling to use their smartphones or their computers, and I'm starting to make a difference with my Toastmasters. I'm contributing to those meetings, the book club. I've just agreed to take the lead with the book club and try and revitalise that, because we've been losing members. So again, I'm helping out there. And so there are lots of examples where I feel now like I'm part of the community, feel like I'm contributing, and I love that. And then another thing that's happened is concerning friendships. So when I was in Germany, towards the end, there was COVID, and then there was us preparing to leave Germany, and I was becoming more and more isolated. As I said, we couldn't invite friends to come and stay because our place was too small. And I started very much to lose contact with old friends. And I had this morbid thought, and that was, if I die, no one, apart from my family, will come to my funeral. And how embarrassing that will be for my family when there's perhaps just 4 or 5 of them there in the church. And I know it was a silly thought, but anyway, it was what I felt. But now coming back to England, I've suddenly got some friends, and it's just shocked me. And again, when we were looking at living in other countries, because I had lost all confidence and become quite isolated, I thought I'll just go off grid and live in some remote part of Portugal, and I'll just potter about in the garden and, I don't know, do jobs around the house, and that would be it. That would be my life. And I didn't really think it through. It wasn't something that was, a realistic or a well-aligned goal for me. It wouldn't have made me happy, but it was the way I was thinking at the time. And I remember spending some time, for example, in France, and we were in this beautiful rural setting, but I was thoroughly depressed the whole time we were there because it was just so quiet. So I've come back to England, and what surprised me is I found I do have some friends. And I've reconnected with friends who live in Stourport-on-Severn, in Princess Risborough, in Birmingham, so places where I've lived. And with those friendships, we've just picked up where we left off, really, and it's been wonderful. I could probably list about 20 people I've met up with who are either members of my family, like my sister and her husband, or cousins or friends that I've seen at least once, most of them twice actually, since I've come back to England. And given that last 10 years in Germany, I only met one other person from England, but other than that I didn't see anyone. And now here I am in England, and suddenly they've all come back into my life. And I wasn't expecting that, and I'm delighted by that. And that's also helped me to feel better in terms of my mental health. It's given me a lift. I feel connected. A couple of people were able to give me references that got me a job in the library. And it was just fantastic. Feel blessed and so happy about that. And then in addition, I'm making new friends. And okay, those friends are people I've recently met, so they're a different kind of relationship, but they're still special people to me, and I'm loving that too. So what does all this mean? Well, it actually means I'm starting to feel like I have something to give to this world. And I see a lot of challenges for England and for the UK in general. And of course we can see these challenges for the whole world. And people are getting angry and frustrated, and you see it with demonstrations, and you see it with the way people are voting and the things people are saying. You can see there's a lot of anxiety out there, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anger, and people are getting disillusioned and fed up with the country and the way it's being run. And what I feel at the moment is part of the problem is a blame culture. So we're going through difficult times and everyone's looking for someone to blame. And you look at it in the Houses of Parliament, for example. So the government struggle to get agreement on anything, because whatever they propose, the opposition parties will always ridicule it, they will always put it down. Even if it's a great idea, they will want to defeat it in Parliament because they want to score political points, they want to make sure the other party becomes less popular, and they want to make sure that they are able to win the next election. So they're driven by, kind of in a way, it's greed and ambition and egos and all of that. And it means there's always a short-term view of the world within Parliament, in my opinion. And at the moment, it feels like everyone's blaming the wrong thing, the wrong people, the wrong thing for what's really happening in the world. And in my view, there are 3 or 4 major forces of change in the world at the moment that are shaking everything up and disrupting everything and turning everything up on its head and causing us to really worry about our futures. And those things, first of all, is technology. So that's driving a lot of change. If you look at social media, you look at smartphone addictions and the way all of the profits from that has been channeled to wealthy owners in probably Silicon Valley. And that's causing a lot of sort of inequality in terms of wealth distribution. There is AI, which is threatening to make a lot of people redundant. And we haven't got to grips with that yet at all as a society. There are all these cyber attacks that we see that are disrupting everything. So technology is just driving this phenomenal change, phenomenal rate of change on a massive scale. And governments aren't able to keep up with it, we're not able to keep up with it, and it just feels sometimes like it's running away with itself out of control, and we don't quite know where it's all leading us. So technology is one problem we've got to deal with. The other is climate and the environment. So when I'm out hiking, I picked up a phrase that I've sort of latched onto, which is leave a place better than you find it. So I'm out on a country walk, and we sit at a bench to have our lunch, have our sandwiches, and then we pack up our things ready to go, put in all our rubbish in a bag, and then we notice there's litter around the bench that we're sat on. Then we'll pick that up as well and take that home with us. And I think that's a really good sort of philosophy or attitude to have. And I'd like to think we should do the same for ourselves. We should do the same for our country and for our world, to leave it in a better place than we found it, so that our children and grandchildren don't hate us for the mess we've left behind. So that's another thing. And then there's geopolitical changes. So that's really hard to keep on top of. And as a small nation, it's very difficult for the UK to steer that in any particular direction. If I think of, okay, I've been going to church lately, and if I think of what I've learned from the Bible, which is well known anyway, but it's that statement that you should love your neighbour, and all the major religions have something similar, I think. That all the major religions talk about how we should be compassionate and empathetic and caring and loving and so on. And as far as I am aware, Christianity has never said love your neighbour unless they vote Conservative, or love your neighbour unless they have the same beliefs as you. They don't say that. They say love your neighbour, full stop. And I believe that the solution to our problems and the challenges we face are to bring us together and to collaborate across parties to find a common solution to common problems that we have. And they require long-term solutions. And if you think back to World War II, that is, for many British people, one of our proudest moments, because we were able to defeat Nazism, able to liberate Europe and so on. And during this period, I think we have a kind of a nostalgic view of it, because there's this feeling that we all came together to defeat a common enemy. And we now have another common enemy, although I don't know whether I would refer it to an enemy, but we have a common challenge, shall we say, and that's those things that I've just outlined. The fact that technology is disrupting everything, the fact that geopolitics is disrupting everything, and we're only going to solve these problems if we come together and find solutions that work for everyone. We shouldn't be just putting in short-term solutions in order to win the next election. We should get together and come up with something that works for everyone. And I know from business that this is possible. It's possible to get people in a room for a few days and to get them to listen to each other's perspectives and to allow a new understanding to emerge and to allow workable solutions to emerge. And this is possible if there is the desire to do this. And I think we should do this. But no one's going to ask me to do it or to help. There are far better people around than me to sort this out in Parliament or to sort this out on a national level. But I do feel I could help at a local level. So even, with my volunteering, I've found a sense of purpose there that I never thought I would get, and I love it. And that's just it, helping individuals to deal with some of the changes that are going on in the world. But maybe I could do something a little bit bigger as well. Perhaps, whilst I can't solve our national political issues, perhaps I could do something at a more local level. Do something with the county council or something like that, or with our town councils, to help them to work across the parties to come up with long-term solutions to some of our difficulties. Anyway, this is all me thinking perhaps a bit fancifully. Perhaps I'm not being completely realistic, but what is clear is that I am now hungry to do something for my nation. I've left it for 15 or 16 years. I've come back and I want to contribute. I want to make a difference. And whether that's at individual level, whether it's at county council level, or whether it's national level, who knows? I'd like to do something to help us to get through this really difficult time that's ahead of us. And all of this has given me a real sense of purpose. So even though I've kind of retired and finished work, I feel really energized by this. And I would have never got that feeling if I was living somewhere like this, where I am now. As beautiful as it is, as a non-Spanish speaking person, I know I would have been an outsider for a very long time. And I know that even after a few years of learning the language, I would have really struggled to make a difference, and that would have been hard on my sense of worth and on my self-confidence and so on. Whereas in England, I finally found where I belong. I finally found home, and I can make something of this. And I love my country, and I want to help it to thrive. And I feel like we have to find a new sense of pride in our nation, and I'm trying to instill that in myself, really, to feel proud of my country and to love it again, and to get that feeling like we had after the London Olympics in 2012 or the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham in 2022, where we have those moments where we really feel good about our nation. Then I want that as well, and because it is a fantastic country that we live in. Anyway, I've talked so much. I hope you've at least enjoyed the town, if you've not enjoyed all of my long-winded storytelling. But I hope it makes sense now as to why I feel England is the right place for me at the moment. And that's not to say I won't want to come back to visit places like this, but I'm already looking forward to going home and making a difference. Anyway, so thanks for joining me for this little walk. I hope you're well wherever you are. Look after yourselves, and I'll probably post another video again soon from the absolutely gorgeous county of Devon. So look after yourselves. Bye.